safer by doing the right thing. You've been the designated driver, you've stayed over, called home, you've called a cab or a friend, and planned ahead. Let's keep doing the right thing. Support sober driving by getting yourself and your friends home safely.
Do the right thing.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? It's your boy DC, Thursday night host of Rogers Out of the Fog.
Right, you kind of got to make your own fun.
Yeah.
Which was a transition for me, going into the morning show here.
Proud. Keep doing the amazing work, will you?
They're learning about how to hire people.
20 years of local matter, so join me every Thursday night and see what's going on in the fog.
This is Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Gale Force Winds Season 2 on Rogers TV, where we explore the journeys of interesting people in and around Newfoundland, Labrador, Canada, and the rest of the world.
Welcome to another edition of Gale Force Winds, and what an exciting one it's going to be. I'm Alan Gale. With me, as always, my good buddy from the East End of St. John's, Jerry Carew. How are you, Jerry?
Well, you know what? We talked about this, Premier. I always kind of, at this point, mention the weather. Well, I'm told that the view out this window is usually much better than this.
If you will, a beautiful Newfoundland day.
Well, the good thing is the sun is not beaming in on us. That's a good thing.
Okay.
So it's an exciting time for Gale Force Winds to have you on.
100%.
Happy to be here.
So, Mr. Premier, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Andrew Furey. I'm born and raised here in St. John's, Newfoundland. I have three siblings. My mom and dad grew up here, a bit of a different story. My father kind of grew up in Mount Cashel and met my mom in university.
Okay.
And he went on to become a teacher. Mom became a nurse. And so we traveled with Dad a bit around the province as he was a vice principal in Stephenville and then in Dunnville. And then he decided he wanted a career change and went to law school. So he picked up the family, and I was 5 and moved to Dartmouth.
How old would he have been at that point?
He would have been in his 30s. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
pivoting at 30.
Yeah, and it was against my apparently against my grandfather's advice, my mom's father. Because he at that point, because he started teaching when he was 15 or something. He was teaching kids older than him at one point, so he was well on his way to a full pension and everything else. So it was a bit of a risk, I guess. But so we went to law school and then moved home, and he started to practice here with a friend of his, Jerry O'Brien, down on Duckworth Street, and they've been buddies ever since. But then he had another career change, and I'm talking more about him now than me, but and ended up in the Senate. But myself and my siblings grew up in the East End of St. John's. Yeah. Gonzaga man.
There you go.
And, Brother Rice for me. I'm surrounded by two Gonzaga guys here.
Yeah, go Vikings. And so that's kind of my early life.
Well, the last time I was in this office, there, Mr. Premier, would have been grade 9 in Gonzaga. That was not yesterday. So this is a great story.
Do you care to tell me who was Premier at the time?
Well, guys, okay, that's to put me on. Can I ask the questions? Anyway, so
would have been Joey, wouldn't it?
That's a great story about your family upbringing. What a great foundation, a school teacher and a healthcare professional. Did Mom practice nursing all that time?
She did until we moved back to St. John's. At that point, she hung up her stethoscope, I guess, and became a music teacher. And so she taught piano out of the basement of our house.
Wow. And the siblings, where do they all find themselves?
So I'm the oldest.
Okay.
My sisters, there's 2 sisters and then a boy. My oldest sister is a lawyer. She's in-house counsel and a VP at Johnson Insurance here in St. John's. And my next sister is a GP here in St. John's, practicing in the East End. No one has left the East End except for me. Wow. And my brother works down at the Delta Hotel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So healthcare obviously finds its way in your family. Tell us about your academic journey.
Yeah, so growing up, I mean, I was pretty attached to my dad's path, and I always thought I wanted to go to law school, to be honest. So I started my undergrad degree was somewhat balanced in terms of arts and science, and I really thought I was still going to do law. So I wrote the LSAT, but I became more kind of interested in biology and microbiology, believe it or not, at the time. And thought, well, this is pretty neat, and learning about antibiotics and how they behave, and so I became more kind of compelled to the medical side. So I did the MCAT at the same time, got into both, and then over the summer, my father was like, "You got to go. You got to make a decision," and he had me set up to talk to different lawyers in town, and including a former premier, and some doctors, and it was one doctor in particular who just passed. Who really sold me on the idea of medicine. He was very understated, and he really kind of, the lawyers were passionate, but he was impactful, and he really kind of was. There's no other profession other than nursing really that you really can. People take you in that degree of trust, and they assume that you're there for their best interest, and you can really make an immediate difference in someone's life. So. I chose medical school and been very happy ever since. Met my wife there.
Yeah.
She a bit of a different story there too.
Yeah.
She's from the United States, and at the time it was just post-COD moratorium, restricted budgets.
Yeah.
Familiar with it now, but Memorial was looking at reducing its number of seats because New Brunswick had pulled out. All of a sudden, Frank McKenna, just in the stroke of a pen, ended New Brunswick's funding for Memorial. So they had these 10 seats assigned to New Brunswick. And my wife was in a small college in Iowa, and someone here knew someone there, pre-email and stuff, picked up the phone, said, "We have these extra seats. Memorial needs people to pay for them. You'd have to pay full tuition," but so she applied and got in. And then she's from Oregon, so it was her dad, when she got in, her dad was like, "You're not really going to go, are you?" Like they had to look
Where's Newfoundland?
They had to look it up on a map, and so we met we were in the same class. Obviously, we started dating in the second year, and I've been together ever since.
So have you ever thanked Frank McKenna?
I haven't thanked Frank McKenna, no, but I have in a weird twist. Ken Dryden is involved.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Now I'm a hockey fan.
Yeah, I know.
Not that I wasn't interested before, but I'm really interested now.
So this small college had a professor who was a good friend of one of our community health professors, and they were both from Toronto, and they were both street hockey buddies of Ken Dryden.
Oh, okay.
So they all grew up on the same street. One prof went to Iowa, one prof went to Newfoundland, and Ken went to the NHL, obviously.
Oh, wow.
So, it was kind of small world, and I've had the opportunity to thank Ken in the past.
That's
there you go.
A very, very unusual kind of connection. What
was your wife's impressions of Newfoundland when she first came here? I mean, you must reflect on that often.
No. So, she fell in love with the place, but, there was 10 or 15 Americans who showed up, and most of them came as this was just going to be a temporary thing until they found a permanent spot in a medical school in the U.S. But all of them stayed and loved the place. Not all of them stayed permanently, but all of them finished their 4 years, and most of them fully embraced it. It's hard not to embrace the culture, and then we both went on to residency and stayed here to do residency. And then there was some debate about where we were going to settle, and that wasn't always a pleasant debate. But I think if I went home today, I know if I went home today and said, we're going to move somewhere else, she's equally as invested in this place as.
There'd be some opposition at home.
There'd be incredible opposition. Yeah, she has a great career at the Janeway.
Right.
And we moved too. We moved. I went and did a fellowship in Baltimore in trauma after my orthopedic residency, and so it was a fairly prestigious fellowship between University of Maryland and Hopkins, and so I could have, not being boastful, but there was a lot of job offers on the table coming from that fellowship, and one day, Baltimore's a dangerous city.
Yeah.
It's only a city of 500,000 people, and they had a murder a day there. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
Good for trauma training, bad to raise a family. I came home one day and there was a cop killed in our neighborhood, and
Really?
and Allison just said, you know, that's it, we're done.
We're done.
And we moved back to Newfoundland to give it a go, and now I couldn't pry her away from here if I wanted to.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. You're right. I mean, you're coming out of a prestigious school like that. You put your finger anywhere you want
Yeah,
to go,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you chose here.
Yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
chose here, yeah.
Wow. So, still practicing medicine, I assume?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
I was on call past weekend.
Wow.
I know an anesthesiologist actually that said he worked with you. Yeah. Interesting. Sorry, running the province and doing that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I found that fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, there can't be many premiers juggling things like that.
I can't think of any. Yeah.
Right.
But you know, I was very open with the people of the province during the leadership. Someone tried to make it a political issue, and then even in the last election, they tried to make it a political issue. And then subsequently, what I found surprising and funny is, you know, a year into it, one of the local journalists tried to make it a big issue, and it was like, I told you I was going to do this.
Yeah.
I know I did it.
Yeah.
Why are you shocked? that
Why
I
are you
did it?
shocked?
Yeah.
And I don't have, like I've been very honest and
Yeah.
fulfilled it. I'm not running a practice.
Yeah.
I'm just maintaining my skills.
Right.
And there are hourly requirements.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 47 years old. I'm not going to do this forever.
No.
And I enjoy the practice. I love the practice. I miss the practice. It's very.
And you're helping healthcare.
And you're helping healthcare, yeah, and I'm helping my colleagues because I do
Yeah.
weekends, and
Right.
it's not like I'm in there on a Tuesday or something, you know.
So you just do the weekends?
I do weekends, and you know, Easter's. And last year, I did a couple of days over the Christmas break. And,
Yeah.
And this past weekend was kind of considered Christmas-ish.
Right.
So it gives my colleagues some relief. It allows me to maintain my skills, and
Wow.
it's perfect for me because I'm a trauma guy. I mean,
Right.
That's what I do. I never really had a lengthy elective practice. So, you know, I was only ever going to see what showed up in the emergency department.
Right. Yeah.
And so those are the skills that I want to maintain, and this allows me to do it. I meet my college requirements, and whenever this adventure is over, and
Yeah.
I know I'm not necessarily in control of that fate, I get to go back to a career that I love and helping people in a real meaningful way.
But it must feel really cool to keep your feet in both paths here while you're doing this. And,
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm not.
and contributing significantly, right?
Yeah, it's a different hat you
Yeah.
put on, and it is a lot of fun to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I love surgery. That's
Yeah.
why I did it. Right?
Yeah.
I never disliked a second of it,
Yeah.
and that same passion and enthusiasm and enjoyment is there when I walk in. And so it really tells me that you know, I made the right career choice.
Right.
But you know, it's really easy, especially now these days. Everything is negative when it comes to practicing healthcare, and you know, even before the pandemic,
Yeah.
one of the best things to do was to sit in the OR lounge and complain about the system and how bad everything is, and
Yeah.
oh my God, government's terrible, and you know, why can't they just do this and that and X and Y?
Yeah.
And this career is bad, and you know, I'd never tell my kids to do this, and all these.
Yeah.
I've had the ability now to be able to step out and look back, and it is a incredible career.
Good.
Practice of medicine is really something special.
Yeah.
People put their trust in you.
Privilege,
you know,
right?
it's a privilege, and you know, all the noise of the bureaucracy of medicine is just noise.
Yeah.
You know, your patients at the end of the day respect you. They know you're doing your best, and the rest of it is just noise.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, so this kind of going out and looking back in is kind of giving me a new perspective, and you know, I gained some of that in my practices in,
Yeah.
in Haiti and elsewhere as well, and it's been really fun.
Sounds to me like you've got a busy family life as well.
Yeah, 3 kids.
Right, 3 kids. How old are they?
The oldest is 16, the next one's 14, and then an 11-year-old, 2 girls and a boy.
That's busy time.
It is, yeah, it's very busy, and yeah, we're trying to find the right balance.
Right.
Because, you know, this job is very busy and all-consuming and exhausting.
Right.
I tell people all the time, it's different than medicine. Like if you're in an intense surgery and it's stressful, and yeah, but you're really fixated, eh? Like you're just concentrated on that and nothing else. Like there's no kind of thought about anything else. It's just that. And then when you kind of come out of the OR, you're exhausted, right?
Yeah.
6, 8, 10 hours in there or whatever. But then it's over.
Yeah.
This job is never over.
It doesn't.
So like I go to bed thinking about it. I dream about it.
Yeah.
I wake up first thing in the morning thinking about it. On my runs, like everything throughout the day is all consuming, unless I'm in the OR. And so the OR is a nice kind of, like I don't think about it.
So the province has got all of you, all the time.
It's incredible. I never dreamed about surgical complications or anything before, And so, but it's got, and all in an endeavor to try to make it to better.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some noise and negativity and human that creeps in, of course, but it's all about, well, what can we do next? This is a very limited moment in time. I don't want to let any opportunity or any portion of it slip through my fingers to try to do something. Yeah. Because it would be very easy to be a stay-at-home defenseman in here.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that would be, that's the default. And that would be very easy. And if you look at the people out on the wall as you came in, the ones who have made any changes, often they're judged poorly, inappropriately with hindsight. But they're the ones who took the risk. They're the people who've been in the ring, the Teddy Roosevelt thing. They're the ones who have fallen. Those are the ones who pick themselves back up, and wipe the dust off and back in for another fight, And that's kind
not
of
afraid to fail, right? Afraid to put themselves out there.
If you're afraid to fail, how do you make any progress? That's
100%.
the same for medicine. That's the same in business. That's the same. Yep. And one of my first kind of directions to cabinet or to staff has been, you have permission to fail.
Wow.
If you learn from it. Yeah. If you just do it over and over again. Yeah. That's not failing. That's just
that's not
being
smart.
stupid.
Yeah.
But you have to have permission to fail, and it's a hard part of this job.
Yeah. Those 3 kids of yours must be getting a great lesson in life, watching mom and dad serving their community, serving their friends and the like. It must be amazing for them to watch all this happen, as busy as it is.
Yeah, we were pretty busy before I had this job. I mean, I spent a lot of time on the road in developing countries and being intricately involved in 2 national charities and creating them and growing them. Yeah. So, if nothing else, what I took from my dad and his family and my mom's family, frankly, and what I hope my kids take from me is not the day-to-day, not even the achievements, but the call and nobility of public service and service to others in some capacity. Yeah. If you reflect on what I said about law versus, I think that's, you can do that in law, but I think that was the ultimate kind of tipping point for me, and it's serving other people. It's putting people ahead of yourself.
I've got a question. I went on the Team Broken Earth website last night, and I was astounded how far reaching it's become. Just tell us a little bit about that, because you were the co-founder of that, I believe. Yeah, so that idea started, I was playing hockey down at St. Bon's when the earthquake happened in Port-au-Prince in 2010. And one of the guys there said, it sounds like they're going to kind of need your help, and I didn't really know. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, what happened? And then went home from hockey and turned on the news, and to see the raw devastation in the streets of Port-au-Prince was quite horrific. And I knew then that, you were going to, not to get too medical, but you're going to die of your abdominal injuries, you're going to die if you had a head injury, but you weren't going to die of a broken arm or broken leg necessarily. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I trained to do. I'm a trauma guy and wanted to kind of go down and help. So I volunteered with a group out of Baltimore. The people who trained me in Baltimore were doing some missions down there, and we operated out of tents. Took my wife and I went down with a resident, and it was a great bit of work. But then when I came back, I was like, we wanted to do more, and I thought Newfoundland and Labrador could do more. And I saw some issues with, not bad ones, but issues in how we could improve the model that I had volunteered with. And so, the kind of idea hit me that why don't we just take everybody that I work with here and move them down there? Right. How hard can it be, right? Yeah. So we did that. We had a group of anesthesiologists, nurses, emergency room doctors, pediatricians, and took them. How long did that take?
I think our first trip, God, you're pushing my memory now, was in 2011.
But the planning process to get that, mobilize that, how long would that have been? A month, weeks?
6 months. But
6 months.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. it got to the point where we turned people away, right? We weren't trying to convince people to come. We were, you know, we were kind of turning them away.
Is that right?
Yeah. So because we only went for a week, right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things about the Broken Earth model that works really well. And one is, you know, you go with the group of people you know. Because part of it is, if I go down with you and I don't know you, you're in the anesthesiologist, you say you can put a person to sleep, I don't know, like, you're trusting me, we've never met.
Right.
Yeah.
I know what, you know, the guys and girls here can do, and they know what I can do, and what I'm not capable of, frankly, equally important. And so there's an inherent trust in that.
Yeah.
But we also went for a week, as opposed to some other organizations, you have to volunteer for a month, 6 weeks, 6 months, a year even for Doctors Without Borders. Yeah, I mean, young family, lots of student debt, nurses with limited, you know, now, of course, in this environment, limited vacation time. So a week worked really well. It was great, and it kind of rippled across. It was only supposed to be one trip, and when we got back, that night I had a BlackBerry. That night we landed in Torbay Airport, and like everybody wanted to go back. Like I didn't even get home, and my inbox was full. And so we knew we were onto something, and then we just started doing 2 or 3 Newfoundland teams a year to Port-au-Prince, same hospital, and then you build relationships there. And then people started to hear about it around the country. And so I went to Calgary and talked to them there, and I thought, for sure, they'll just take this and make it their own. And I was totally okay with that. Like take that model, and they'll call it something else, Foothills Inc. or something. And it'd be great, good, more people doing it the better. But no, they wanted to wave the Broken Earth flag and be a part of the organization.
Wow.
And so it went from Calgary to Dalhousie to Vancouver to Saskatchewan to downtown Toronto to Barrie to Ottawa, and then to University of Massachusetts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize it was
massive.
It's really spread far and wide.
Each team, by the way, can be anywhere from 10 to 30 people, right? So you're not talking about small.
That's making a difference for sure.
Yeah, really, really impactful. Yeah.
You got a great foundation, it sounds like, a great kind of setup here. What about politics bit you? Tell me about that to get us to where we are in the moment.
Yeah, well, again, a call to public service, but my father was always involved politically speaking. He ran a lot of campaigns in the background. He chaired Clyde Wells' campaign. He chaired Jean Chrétien's kind of leadership campaign here in the locally. And then Brian Tobin's provincial election campaigns and federal election campaigns at the time. So it was always, and of course, my uncle is a provincial cabinet minister. So it was always something that I was interested in. Again, my undergrad was kind of, mainly all science, of course, but arts too. It's different for people on the medical school trajectory. And kept an open mind. Worked in political offices in the summer often.
Wow.
And then got bit by the bug. Not so much the political bug, but as I matured, more the policy bug, and how the different policies can really change the landscape. It's really where you can make a large, impactful difference. And so I was drawn to that. And then started to get more, when I came back from Baltimore and started to have a professional setup, became more involved myself, running, the Prime Minister's leadership campaign here, and then running his initial election campaign here for the province, and then a segue in.
Wow. And so, did you ever, I guess it's hard to, when you were sat around that dining room table when, politics would have been a topic of discussion.
It was fun Sunday dinners at my place.
Is that right?
I was going to ask, I can only imagine.
Very lively.
Politics never off the table at your house.
Never off the table, and not just, conservative, liberal politics, like big political issues at the time. Because when I was growing up, abortion was, and it still is, a lively debate.
Right.
Nothing was off limits, and incredibly Catholic upbringing, and obviously my father was raised by Christian brothers, and so incredibly religious upbringing, but nothing was off the table. When my wife first came to Sunday dinner, She was mortified.
Was she?
Did you prepare?
Oh my God, no! That'd be that's too much fun, because there's occasional curse word, and no topic is off sides.
Yeah.
It's pre-internet on your phone, so there's no fact check. Right? You can kind of take any argument wherever you want.
No one's distracted. Everyone's in the moment.
No one's distracted. No one can prove you wrong. Oh, that statistics is not right. So some significant banter, and the first time it was over, she couldn't believe that we would ever talk again. Right? And it was just like on to dessert, right? It was great bit of fun.
Hilarious. That is pretty good.
Mortifying.
Mr. Premier, we've been, Jerry and I have had the privilege to be in conversation with an awful lot of people in Newfoundland over the last couple of years that are doing amazing things. Everything in the academic circles, in tech sector, in industry, the ocean sector, and in government folks as well, doing wonderful things. Something's happening in this province where government, industry, and academia, they're all working together for the benefit of all. And we often use the expression, a rising tide floats all boats. And it's really evident here. But what is the secret sauce in this place? Why is it happening?
I can't tell you all the secrets. That's the first thing they told me when I walked in here, the recipe for the secret sauce. No, I mean, I really think it's the success of Newfoundland and Labrador is largely driven by its ingenuity, and it's largely based out of necessity, historically. And so as much as we like to complain about the challenges that the province has faced as a people and as a location, I think they've made us more creative, they've made us more caring, and they've made us better citizens collectively in wanting to help your neighbor, to help your community. I mean, historically, because of the way, of course, the island and Labrador are settled, you had to. So it's part of the fabric of who we are. It's part of our DNA. If a fisherman didn't come home, the community rallied behind the wife and the children. And if there was a collective good of a community, it was all embraced. That still exists. In every community around this province, and it was on full display in Come Home Here. I really noticed it. And so I think, we're tougher for the challenges. The challenges still exist, but it really has driven a sense of a collective will, a collective spirit that doesn't exist in Nova Scotia, it doesn't exist in New Brunswick, it doesn't exist in Ontario, arguably exists in Quebec, but that really separates us from a lot of others. And of course, the firm connection, the magnetic connection to this place it's impossible to explain.
It is.
But there is a magnetism no matter where you are in the world. If you're a Newfoundlander and Labradorian, number one, you'll find someone else there who's a Newfoundlander and Labradorian, but you always want to go home. It's a joke in heaven, right? Like, you've heard that joke.
Oh, I have.
St. Peter,
All the Newfoundlanders watching this podcast, staring out this window, are missing that fog today.
Indeed, you don't come here. You don't stay here for the weather.
No.
It's not the warmth of the weather. It's the warmth of the people.
It's the warmth of the people, right? And that's exactly it. It's we've heard terms about people say resiliency and vulnerability. They're willing to allow themselves to open up and let others in to help them. And that's a beautiful thing. You don't see that everywhere.
No, I mean, by our nature, because a large portion of the province is an island, we've been isolated and assumed to be territorial oftentimes. But that's completely not the case. Very welcoming, and if you look throughout history, there's all kinds of evidence of that, whether that's in the tragedy in St. Lawrence and the shipwrecks there, or beyond. People of Newfoundland and Labrador have always been welcoming to other cultures, other people, and it's on full display in a big kind of way right now with respect to Ukrainians resettling here.
Right. Now, a lot of exciting things happening in Newfoundland at the moment that not a lot of people, quite frankly, are aware of. I mean, in Newfoundland they're certainly aware, but the rest of Canada, I talk to my mates, I do a lot of work.
Don't tell them, by the way.
What?
Don't tell them.
But a lot of exciting things happening. That must be great for you to watch all of these things unfold. I mean, you just made a huge announcement just before
Today,
you arrived here, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. And, people often ask me, why I wanted to do this. Because 2 years ago, it looked like, all hope was lost.
Yeah.
I put my hand up, by the way, 2 weeks before the pandemic. But, former Premier Ball was writing the Prime Minister saying they couldn't borrow money. Oil looked like it was heading in the wrong direction, and then it did. The expenses were too high. It seemed like, just bad news after bad news and no opportunity. And I saw it as the right time to step up because I want my kids to grow up here. And so put my career aside and stepped in, recognizing that those challenges revealed opportunities. And I think the opportunities came and were accelerated during the pandemic. They would have risen to the surface eventually anyway, I think, with the right leadership and direction. But certainly those opportunities have been accelerated because of the pandemic, because of the subsequent war in Ukraine and disruption and geopolitical territorial tensions that exist that have shifted markets to allow us to really reach to new heights and occupy spaces that others can't. I mean, if you look across the country, we're not the only oil and gas producers, but we're the only ones with a path towards a real path towards renewable transition.
Yeah.
Others are going to rely on technology that involves carbon capture and others. And that's important, and I'm not dismissing that. But we have a sweeter petroleum product, lower carbon footprint. It's not landlocked. It's arguably what, if the world is going to use oil and gas, and there's no one saying it's not, even after 2050,
100%.
They should be using the lower carbon emitting product, which we have. But we also have an abundance of green energy opportunities, whether that's in the wind or hydroelectric capacity or using both or portions of those to generate hydrogen in a new energy source. It's an exciting time to be here, and we also have an abundance of critical minerals. So you look at the things that power these phones, that are going to power the batteries that power communities in the future. It's all requires critical minerals, nickel, lithium, cobalt. Newfoundland and Labrador is well positioned, and Nova Scotia doesn't have that. New Brunswick doesn't have that. PEI doesn't have that.
Yeah.
We have it, and we need to make sure that we're allowing that to develop and not getting in the way as a government.
Yeah. And not just in St. John's either. I mean, this is all over Newfoundland and Labrador.
Most of that is not in St. John's.
All of that is not in St. John's.
All of it. Yeah.
No. St. John's is it's great. St. John's is growing with respect to the tech sector.
Is it ever?
It's a good hub for support and supply chain for the offshore. It's growing leaps and bounds in different industries, but the heart and soul, the engine of Newfoundland and Labrador, the economic engine, is going to be outside the overpass.
Yeah.
And no different, by the way, than Canada as a whole. Everyone likes to think of Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. The beauty of Canada, the economics of Canada, the engine of Canada doesn't lie in the big cities. It lies in our natural resources, which, of course, we're so lucky to have just a bounty of here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
So you started off, and it looked pretty rough. She's turning around a little bit now, and it's looking brighter, right?
And it feels like there's a good feeling here these days,
100%.
and I can't take credit for it, but it doesn't. I haven't felt the positivity that I feel walking downtown since, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, since like 2006-ish kind of thing. It feels like there's a better vibe.
Right.
I think Newfoundland, we've had this inferiority complex for a period of time. I sense that may, should I dare say it, be undergone?
It should be, but I don't discredit the value in it.
No.
Because tell me one Newfoundlander who hasn't gone to the mainland thinking that, knowing that everyone at home is watching, and knowing that you better pull up your socks and do your goddamn best to perform.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I felt that way going to Baltimore. I know others feel it. So the inferiority complex, I think, is leaving definitively, but it is also a source of good motivation. And you can feel it, by the way, amongst the other premiers and in the tables across the country. We're not a joke.
No.
there's no one looking at us in a joking way anymore. They're looking at the opportunity that exists here and the real potential that exists here to achieve national agendas, frankly.
I was going to say, if they were smart, they'd be looking at it as a bit of a powerhouse. How do we attach our wagon to some of this?
Well, if you're the federal government right now, the current one, you're looking towards transition.
Right.
Well, what other province has the ability to transition like we do?
Yeah.
And by the way, which other province has already done it?
Right.
Yeah.
I remember someone saying, well, how can you possibly do that? Like, it's too, we're never going to move society that quickly. We have done it here in Newfoundland in 1992.
Right.
People are used to disruptive change,
right, exactly.
Good or bad. And I think that sets us apart in a certain extent.
Mr. Premier, what are you most excited about in 2023? What's on the horizon that's really got you excited?
Yeah, I'm excited about the energy space, as I see a huge potential in the wind to hydrogen. I see it in the hydroelectric space. 2041 is coming up, as you know, and in utility terms, that's today.
Right.
So I'm excited to see, we've announced a 2041 committee to provide us with options, and especially given the changing energy markets around locally and in North America, to see how that power is best used and how we can best use it to help solve some of the fiscal issues that are structural when it comes to Newfoundland and Labrador.
Yeah.
So I'm excited in that space. I'm excited to see the Terra Nova come back online. Sonova's starting construction again in Argentia. Hibernia is drilling again. Beta Nor has moved to the next stage. It's a lot of good things happening. And so, for those who wrote us off 2 years ago, shame on you, but here we are.
Isn't that amazing?
What would your, there'd be a lot of Newfoundlanders going to watch this, and they would say, "Jesus, it's time for me to come home."
Yeah, we'll take you all.
What would you say to them? What would your pitch be to come on home to Newfoundland?
Well, there's never been a more opportune time to come home to Newfoundland and Labrador. I met recently with Tony Blair, and Tony Blair said, "You have everything the world needs right now.
Yeah.
You are modern. You have what is required for a modern economy: critical minerals, an abundance of green renewable energy, and the petroleum products that are going to be required into the future.
Right.
We should be the envy of the world."
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes an outsider to tell you how good things are here.
Right.
So for anyone who's watching from away, come home. It's good here now.
Right.
And with all the inflationary pressures that exist across jurisdiction, it's still a reasonably affordable place to live. I have no idea how anyone can live in downtown Toronto from an affordability perspective or from a blood pressure perspective, driving around. And one of the kind of unanticipated consequences of the pandemic, of course, is this reverse urbanization trend, and we've been the benefit of that here. But I tell people all the time, where else is there? There's no better place to raise a family, to have a good work-life balance, to have good professional goals that you can achieve while still maintaining a good life and a good outside balance. And the weather is what it is, but that's why they have planes.
Exactly. Probably why there's so many musicians.
Yeah.
Music here is incredible.
Amazing. I mean, I'm very lucky to have good friends who are musicians here in the province, and we've put a great deal of emphasis on the art scene here in the province. Part of the impetus for Come Home Year was reinvigorating not just 2022 coming out of the pandemic, but reinvigorating some of the festivals that I grew up with, you guys probably grew up with, that just need an infusion of cash, an infusion of energy in some of the small communities around the province. And we're very, very blessed to have a rich fabric of storytelling, of musicians, of singers, of actors. I mean, we've got so far above our weight. Tell me what the CBC would be without Newfoundlanders.
Yeah, I know. That's right. Yeah,
it's true.
There's creativity.
It'd be pretty boring.
Yes, there's creativity every turn of the corner here.
Absolutely.
Whether it's in the, as I say, the tech sector, or in cuisine and music and everywhere. The people are creative in the way they do business. Jerry Crew, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just think that there's so much going on here. We had a chat with young Michael prior to you coming here. I think he's in your communications department. And we asked him, he's in his 20s. What do you say to young people? He said there's opportunity. I have a 19-year-old son and a 15-year-old son. Premier, it's really important that they know there is opportunity. So, you know, despite the fact that we're in our mid-50s, we're trying to do a podcast that's going to bring that information out.
Yeah.
I'm really impressed with the way you've pivoted from your career into this career. I can't say everybody would want to sit in that chair. I do have a question for you.
It's a very lonely chair.
What would you say to anyone out there who's thinking of taking the leap into politics? What would you say to them?
Please do it. I mean, we always need people to step up. The people need people to step up. And frankly, the more diverse the backgrounds, the better. You know, and that's why I was very open and leaned into, frankly, the continuing to keep my hours up. You know, and by the way, so should lawyers or anyone else who has professional credentials that they need to maintain.
Yeah.
Or else we're left with a very limited pool of people, all of whom may be very good people, but a limited experience. And when you're trying to assemble a team, diversity is one of the best ingredients to any good team. And you can't do that if it's just facsimiles or photocopies of the same person over and over again. So I mean, anyone who's considering it, it's a great career. It's a great portion of a career. I try to remind my cabinet and caucus it's very fleeting, and so don't ever take it for granted. And as soon as you're comfortable, it's time to move on. But very few careers give you the ability to impact people's lives like this does. And if you're altruistic and your heart's in the right place, I think people will see the motivation for what it is and get behind you in a vision for the future.
Well, another wonderful conversation on Gale Force Winds, and what an absolute pleasure it was to chat with you today.
Thanks for having me.
And giving us your perspective, and what a
my wife may give you a different perspective entirely.
Well, maybe we'll have her on in the new year.
What a beautiful foundation that you've come from to get to where you are now, and the direction you're taking the province is admirable indeed. And this is what a steady hand on the tiller looks like, so we certainly appreciate it. And I'll leave the podcast with my own piece of advice, and quite frankly, the world needs more Newfoundland and Labrador.
It does.
And the world needs more Andrew Furey. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Gale Force Winds Season 2 on Rogers TV. To provide a little context, what you just watched was Premier Furey speaking to Gale Force Winds in December of 2022. That originally aired on our YouTube channel on January 1st, 2023. The following interview with Andrew Furey, Premier Andrew Furey, was recorded at SUCP. SUCP is the Southeastern United States and Canadian Provinces trade show. It's held every year somewhere on the eastern seaboard. Luckily enough, it was held in St. John's, Newfoundland this year, and it showcased Newfoundland to the world. We thought it was incredibly relevant to showcase this 5-10-minute video with Premier Furey talking in July of 2023. That is followed up by an interview with Alan Doyle, who was the keynote speaker. Thank you very much for tuning in to Gale Force Winds on Rogers TV.
Welcome to the 2023 SUCP Conference, the Edge of Opportunity podcast from St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. The Southeastern United States Canadian Provinces, or SUCP Alliance, was established in 2007 to formally advance a common interest in enhancing economic ties between the two regions. The Alliance is a strategic trade and investment-focused partnership between 6 southeastern U.S. states and 6 Canadian provinces. This year's conference is focused on opportunities in the blue and green economies.
And we are back at SUCP 2023 with Gale Force Winds. I can tell you, we're having a great time. I'm Alan Dale. This is Jerry Krug. One of our favorite guests is now on the podcast with us. And indeed, I've said this before, steady hand on the tiller here in Newfoundland and Labrador. Premier, I'm not going to take words out of your mouth here, but share the optimism that's happening here in Newfoundland right now.
Oh, it's just an incredible time to be part of the next step for Newfoundland and Labrador. I think we all people should realize the opportunity that exists right now. The world is changing, and Newfoundland and Labrador has all the key ingredients for a modern global economy. The challenge for us as leaders is to first understand that, to recognize it, and then to capture that energy to make bold decisions to truly create a modern Newfoundland and Labrador to meet those modern global demands. I mean, the energies, we can be a world leader in energy right now. We have an abundance of hydroelectric capacity, developed and undeveloped. We have an abundance of wind, a renewable resource that we've never even dreamed could be used for anything for generations. And now in front of us is the opportunity to harness that wind and to change it into hydrogen, which Europe is betting on as an alternative fuel source to start to replace petroleum products. And of course, we have our offshore oil and gas products, which are some of the lower carbon, has some of the lowest carbon footprint, one of the lowest carbon footprints of any oil and gas product in the world. So different than some other jurisdictions, Newfoundland and Labrador can truly be an energy leader, and a leader in that transition, exercising the value of non-renewables while we create incredible, sustainable, long-term sustainable opportunities in the renewable space. It is incredibly exciting in that energy sector right now. And of course, we have other opportunities, and we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. We recognize right now that we have incredible industries developing here in tech, as we saw, the Verafin deal with NASDAQ. We really think that there's a vibrant ecosystem right here, right now. I mean, when you think of Newfoundland, the island portion, it was always a challenge to get our product to market, whether that was fish or energy or other commodities. Technology doesn't necessarily need an actual highway. It needs an information highway, but it doesn't need an actual highway. So we can export that creativity, that innovation like never before. We have an incredible opportunity in our mineral resource. I mean, we're continuously ranked as one of the best places to do mining in the world, and that's thanks to Minister Parsons and the people at IET who do some incredible work. But right now, the world needs critical minerals, and guess what? They're not buying it from China. They're not buying it from Russia. They're not buying it from any Russian-affiliated countries anymore. So just to meet the normal demands, let alone the demands of a green transition and new clean batteries, just to keep up with normal construction, normal infrastructure, the world wants stable, secure sources of these commodities like iron ore, and we're very lucky to have them. But in addition to being a stable democratic jurisdiction, we have the ability to say that we can have some of the greenest production of those commodities. And if you look at a company like Rio Tinto, just for example, and they have a worldwide portfolio, and they're looking across the world and saying, okay, where are we going to develop? Where are we going to make these long-term billion-dollar investments? Well, we want to make sure that we have access to clean, green energy so that we can, on the market, promote it as an added value and that it's green steel, for example. So if you're going to have green steel, it has to come from the ground all the way through to production. Well, our upstream impact is that we can provide potential for not only high-quality product, it's easier to refine as a result, but we also have access to clean electricity for them to be able to sell that around the world. So incredible opportunities right now in Newfoundland and Labrador. I know sometimes it's hard to see in the day-to-day grind, but if everyone can just pick their head up every now and then and just look at the new horizon, the modern horizon for Newfoundland and Labrador, they'll be excited.
Right. And Mr. Premier, not only is that inside the overpass, this is rural Newfoundland and Labrador that's going to benefit as well.
This is breathing new life into rural Newfoundland and Labrador. And these people look at the windmills, for example. So that's an industry by itself. If you look at the Port of Argentia, they're creating a business opportunity just for laydown area for the windmills, because these things are gigantic. And because of the supply chain issue and having to get in the queue to secure these things, people are buying them on spec. Well, they can't. There's no land to lay those things down. These huge items on the northeastern seaboard. It just doesn't exist. But the Port of Argentia has made an opportunity to rent space, lease space to energy companies around the world so that they can lay down different parts of the windmill, and then when they're needed, put them somewhere else. So we're going to need, there's all kinds of indirect opportunities with respect to that particular industry alone.
But it's not hype either, Premier. It's money being spent right now. Port Stephenville, Argentia, Bjorn Peninsula with Everwind Fuels, Tech NL with the sale, Gander, right?
Yes, and I say all the time, you don't have to take my word for it. I'm not trying to sell people on a rubber boot factory or a greenhouse. I mean, if you don't believe me, the Chancellor of Germany was here in Stephenville. He didn't come because the Premier of Newfoundland said, would you please come and try to create an industry for us. He came because he knew that, and his officials knew, that we had what Europe needs right now. And if you don't believe him, the President of the United States has invested $750 billion in the IRA to incentivize people and companies to switch to hydrogen and alternative fuels. That has to be produced somewhere.
Right.
And it can be produced right here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So the opportunities are immense. They're challenging in that we're actually going to need help getting workers here, which who would have, if someone had said to me 5 years ago, you're going to have to go to Fort Mac and recruit people to come home to meet all these opportunities, I would have said you're correct.
What's the estimate, Premier, on the number of jobs in the next 10 years? Do you have that number in your head?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but if you look at, you have to consider the jobs attached to the creation of the landscape for the windmills, the implementation and the maintenance of the windmills, then if you're talking about the hydrolysis plant, and then all the shipping terminals that will be attached to it. So the direct and indirects is not insignificant. And on top of all that, there's indirects in the education of people to provide for this industry. So not only will we be a world leader in supplying this, we'll be a world leader in making sure that we're educating people and making sure that they have the skills to work in this field, which, by the way, no one else is doing around the world right now necessarily. This is an emerging industry.
And Minister, we just are.
You keep giving me demotion.
He's the Premier.
Mr. Premier.
We're not editing that out, by the way.
Mr. Premier, we just heard Alan Doyle talk about the traits of the people from this province, welcoming our neighbours to the south and indeed other Canadian provinces. And I know you to be a proud Newfoundlander yourself. It must feel great to welcome our neighbours here up to this wonderful province.
Oh, it feels fantastic. I had the opportunity to attend SUS in Savannah, Georgia last year, and just to be able to plant the seed with many of the people who are here today, and to see them actually and have discussions with them, and to see a twinkle in their eye about realizing the potential of this place, the potential for partnership, but also seeing them captured by the people and the spirit of this place, which we know, of course, is the secret sauce and is that magnetic force that draws tourists back more than once. It's the pull that brings all Newfoundlanders and Labradorians back home as well. So it's pretty special to be here today.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the team that put this together, your team at the government that pulled this together, Jillian and the crowd, I tell you, what a great job they've done.
We're very fortunate to have a bureaucracy and officials that work for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador that are just truly dedicated. And I believe they bring that sense of pride to every time they come to work. I believe that they're proud of this place. They're in the public sector because they want to give back. There is a call for public service, and there is something that is very special about that, and it's an incentive into itself. It's intrinsic, and we're very fortunate in Newfoundland and Labrador to have an incredible public service. They show up to work because they want to help people in Newfoundland and Labrador, and what else can you ask other than that?
Mr. Premier, once again, been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and keep that steady hand on the tiller. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Premier, exciting times in Newfoundland. Thanks again.
Indeed. You take care.
We know it's busy organizing a trade show. That's why we created the Gale Force Winds content creation technique. Allow us to capture all the interviews and goings-on at the trade show to make a splash for your event. Well, welcome back to the Sioux CP 2023 podcast here on Gale Force Winds. I got to tell you, a lot of cool things happening. I'm Alan Dale. With me, as always, my good buddy Jerry Crew. We got a guest on here now that's been on our podcast before, but today he's going to talk about something a little bit different. The last time we spoke, Alan, you had a new play opening at the Charlottetown Theater.
I know, it was great fun.
And
we were in Charlottetown with you.
I know.
Yeah.
And we had a great day, and it was excellent. We had a great run in Charlottetown, and we had a great run across Newfoundland and Labrador, and they were just prepping for the next presentation at Telltale Harbour coming up in 15 or 16 months from now. So yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting times, and it's great fun, and it's great to be here today at this thing too.
Alan, economic development always front and center here in Newfoundland and Labrador. They're open for business.
Yeah.
They've brought in southeastern United States, Canadian provinces all together.
Exciting.
What do you think about all the opportunities that are in front of us here in Newfoundland and Labrador?
Well, I've said forever, economic development and doesn't always go hand in hand when people think about the arts in the world, you know. And I've been saying it, especially for a place like Newfoundland and Labrador, is like our artistic, offerings for the rest of the world are a huge economic driver for the region and for the industry. I've always thought so. I've always swore by it. And I mean, all you need to do is, look at our tourism numbers and find out how many people came here in part or in whole because of some band, because of some play, some book, some art, some piece of storytelling that drew them here, whether it was Come From Away or my concert or whatever, and I always think that they go hand in hand and that they're extremely important. And then, having traveled a lot in the southern states, I see so many obvious things to me that are links between the two places, right? So many, just literally just in the current, climate, of literally the actual weather of the world. I see all, I see places in the south that are so eager to find somewhere to go in the summer that's not 40 degrees,
Right.
And places like northeastern North America, I think, are going to benefit tremendously from, migration, either seasonally or what have you, and I think that's a huge connection. And then, of course, there's long before any of us were here, there's this huge connection between everything on the eastern seaboard, and the history, Canadians don't always like to talk about it, but, the history that runs north-south is often as significant or more significant than the history that goes east-west.
Yeah.
Right? People are, shocked to think that, Boston and Halifax have more in common than Halifax and Saskatoon.
Yeah.
Right? But they do. And that whole eastern seaboard, in any other twist of fate, we could have been the same country. We could have been the same place. But it's just so it's connected, and especially in it's far beyond my pay grade to talk about, the global economics of things like, the fishing industry on the northeast part of the Atlantic coast or what have you. But it doesn't take a genius to figure out that if people work together and work in concert, the whole tide rises.
Alan, you said that, you've been traveled extensively up and down in the United States touring. You would have a great lens on people, and people are the same, aren't they, really, where you go? I mean, whether you go down in Alabama and Tennessee, they're not much different, are they?
Almost everywhere you go, people like to work hard and play hard in some different forms, and thankfully it's different, how that play and how that work takes place. But, I haven't been many places in the world where people aren't singularly focused on making their communities better. Or not singularly focused, or at least partially focused on making the general economic world that they live in go forward and not backward, and it's so, there's a cooperation and a learning, I think, and an exchange of ideas, and that sounds like a lofty thing to say sometimes, we could have an exchange of ideas, but I've been places where I saw people actually exchange ideas, and it worked. That's just not a lofty thing to say. It's actually a very practical thing to say, and it certainly happens in my world all the time. When you see any band you ever see, nosing around backstage at the other band's, electronics or their tour bus or their trailer, or we're constantly trying to figure out how the other guys are doing it to see if we can do it any better. And that's exactly what's happening, I suspect, in a conference like this.
Now, you would have been welcomed into some of these communities with open arms, whether it was down in that southeastern part of the United States. How's it feel to welcome them up here?
Oh, it's great. We're not great at everything in Newfoundland and Labrador, but we're excellent hosts. Jesus, if we're good at anything at all, it's like desperate to see someone coming and absolutely horrified to think that they might leave and not have a great time.
Right.
that is, that everywhere's not like that. There's lots of places you go where they don't care if you like it or not.
we care.
Oh my gosh, too much. Like really.
Alan, you're the perfect fellow to welcome this group here, and we want to thank you for coming back on the show once again. It's always a pleasure to have you. You're a real pro, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much.
Thanks. Cheers, boys.
Thank you.
Keep her going.
Thank you for tuning in to the 2023 Seuss CP Conference, the Edge of Opportunity podcast from St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador. The 2024 conference is taking place in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins Season 2 on Rogers TV, where we focus on conversations with leaders, business owners, and change makers that inspire. Please tune in next week.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
If you have a comment about this program,